Hello there, I'm Blackbright, broadcasting out of the UK, and welcome to my channel. There's a lot of disturbing things happening around the world and over which we have no control. We have no control whatsoever. We can speak out our control, we can protest about what we don't like to see. But ultimately, there's a force larger than ourselves, and all we can do is what is in our hearts to do. We can't do anything more or anything less. All we can do is our best to resolve a situation that is fast becoming out of hand and is going to be taken over in ways we cannot imagine. Anyway, people are asking, why are people in the UK rioting over George Floyd when nothing has happened over here, when it didn't happen in the UK? Well, I think what the death of George Floyd has done is to resonate with a lot of those people who have been mistreated by the police. And yes, it happens, as often. I don't know if it's as often as it happens in the United States, and it happens in different ways because our police don't always wear guns. So the excessive force is done with batons, it's done through more police officers on one person and that kind of thing. So it's less by the gun, so it's less it's less highlighted. Let me put it that way. But it still happens, and I'm going to give you a list of the people who have died at police hands in the UK, and then maybe you can understand why what happened to George Floyd has triggered what is happening in the UK. We had the Black Lives Matter movement, which was formed in 2013 to address police brutality and the killings of black men and women by the police in the United States. In the UK, the high-profile police brutality custody death of Sheku Bayo in Fife and 18-year-old Mazee Mohammed in Liverpool. Both were severely bruised and battered while in police custody. There's been 500 police custody deaths, of which have been black and minority ethnics, and 1,000 white people have been killed at police hands. So in total, 1,500. Either deaths by police by shooting or by in custody. So that is quite a lot of people. And no police officer sworn to serve and protect has been prosecuted under the law. So we have to ask ourselves, is coronavirus the virus or is racism the virus? That is what people are asking, because it's touching on every one of our lives. Trevor Smith died at police hands on the 15th of March 2019. Spencer Ashworth was shot 10 times on the 27th of September 2017. Dalian Atkinson died after being tasered by police on the 15th of August 2016. Jermaine Baker, unarmed, was shot on the 11th of December 2015. Richard Davis was shot after a domestic abuse incident on 21st of October 2015. It doesn't say whether these people were armed or unarmed, but I think the majority were unarmed because we don't really have guns in the UK. Anthony Granger was unarmed and was shot on the 3rd of March 2012. Mark Duggan was shot in the chest on 4th of August 2011. Kingsley Burrell died from neglect at the hands of police. He was detained under the Mental Health Act. Orsini Lewis died on the 3rd of September 2010, restrained by police. He had mental health issues. Sean Rigg and Habib Ullah died in police custody in 2008. Nicholas Palmer was killed by police on the 12th of May 2004, and Derek Bennett was shot on the 16th of July 2001 when his cigarette lighter in the shape of a gun was mistook for a real gun. One of the first most high-profile black British victims of police brutality and misconduct was David Oluwale, who died in 1969 and who is considered to be the first black person to have died in police custody in the UK. Another high-profile case was Sherry Gross, who was shot and as a result paralysed in 1985 by Metropolitan Police Inspector Douglas Lovelock. In 1998, father of two, Christopher Alder, a black British man of Nigerian heritage and an army veteran, was killed while in police custody after having been assaulted outside a club in Hull where he lived. It was found that negligence of the hospital staff and police ultimately caused his death in 2002. A coroner's jury returned a verdict that Alder was unlawfully killed. Police officers went on trial for manslaughter and misconduct, but were acquitted. In 2006, IPCC, that's the Independent Police Corporation that investigates police, Chairman Nick Hardwick said that officers were guilty of the most serious neglect of duty, amounting to unwitting racism. Jean-Charles de Menezes was a 27-year-old electrician who was shot dead by police on the 22nd of July 2005. He was shot 7 times in the head at close range, point blank range, by officers from the Met Police CO19 firearms unit. The Met Police Commissioner, Sir Ian Blair, told a press conference that the dead man was challenged and refused to obey police instructions, while Scotland Yard said his clothing and behaviour at the station added to their suspicions. These claims were later found to be false. Blair admitted the force had made a serious mistake in the immediate aftermath of the shooting. In 2009, the Met had to pay compensation believed to be just over £100,000, plus the family's legal costs. In return, the family agreed to end their legal civil action against Scotland Yard. The Met was successfully prosecuted under health and safety legislation the following year and fined £175,000. Azelle Rodney was unarmed at the time of his death in 30th of April 2005 when he was shot 8 times by an armed officer. Former police marksman Anthony Long in a trial for murder of Rodney. The jury found that Mr. Long had no lawful justification for shooting Azelle Rodney, and they found Mr. Long guilty of murder. When injustice becomes law, resistance becomes duty. Nick Ayton. So these miscarriages of justice are why civilians in the UK are protesting, because George Floyd reminded them of what is happening in the UK. I heard that papers are being served, giving the government, I think, a 30-day notice that there is going to be a lawful rebellion. I'm not sure how true that is, but it is on YouTube if you want to check it out. Apparently, global protests will start on the 22nd of June 2020. But I think what's happened now is kind of brought it forward, because what happened to George Floyd and has kind of brought the protest forward in America, and it's also brought the protest forward in the UK. So there will be no protection, because under the lawful rebellion law, they need to have 30 days notice. And then they have the right for lawful rebellion. Because they brought the rebellion, what they would consider rebellion forward, i.e. they're protesting, there's no protection for them, which is a shame. So under the UK Global Lawful Rebellion Against Treason and Sedition, we have the right to exercise our constitutional rights, although I'm not sure how this is organised, or I don't really know enough about it. I've heard that the royal crests are being removed from Buckingham Palace and the windows are being boarded up. So goodness knows what's being planned, and I also don't know how true that is. I remember hearing that a couple of months ago, and once again, I don't know if it happened or if it didn't happen. Some believe that Security Clause Article 61, which holds the government to account in the UK, can be invoked. Article 61 Security Clause is there to protect the public from a government that is not governing properly. And that is one of the main reasons, because it's a part of the EU, their protocol. It's why they're so eager to Brexit. Because then I think, I'm not quite sure how it works, but there might be some adjustments if they come out of the EU. Aspects of, well, it's very kind of complicated because the Bill of Rights came out of the Magna Carta, which is an 800-year-old document. And the Magna Carta has been compromised. I mean, a third of it's been taken out. And when the Magna Carta was created, it was to protect the people. And it meant all people. And everyone was accountable up to the monarchy. Everyone was accountable. And the government was there to serve the people, and everybody was to be protected from treason, from laws being passed without including them, all that kind of thing. And as we can see, there's laws being passed all the time, especially since coronavirus. It seems very quick, but it's actually every 21 days. The laws are being amended and adjusted, and we're finding ourselves less and less able to do what we want. I mean, up to the point that they passed a legislation yesterday that that you can't sleep over at your partner's house. I mean, why would they pass such a law? Why? Because that's exactly what they're saying. If two people, you're going to be penalised because a couple doesn't live together. Because that's what they're saying. Anyway, so I think what's going on now, we know that apparently America's declared martial law. Goodness knows how soon the UK will come afterwards, because they're like brother and sister, aren't they? They're like siblings. So anyway, aspects of it apparently remains in force today and cannot be repealed. Article 61 remains in force and cannot be repealed, and it was written to provide rights to the citizens of England. And I'm not sure what aspects of it. But I remember doing a video a long time ago when they first started talking about leaving the EU. And I remember mentioning there that the reason why they wanted to leave the EU was to take away our human rights. And under the EU, we could, our human rights was preserved, and I was scoffed at it. People scoffed at me because they're saying, "Oh, how can that happen? Oh, don't be so silly. It's the EU HCR, whatever it is, EU." Anyway, I can't remember what it is now because I didn't plan on speaking on it. But that is the main reason they want to come out of the EU. So it's all about control. EU was there to protect the citizens, and out of the EU, our rights will not be protected. And it might not be in the way that you envisage, but it can still happen. And that's just my opinion. Much of the free world have constitutions based on UK's common laws, i.e. laws that are put in place to ensure no loss, no harm and no injury, to protect legal and human rights. People's constitutional rights were embodied and enforced in the Declaration of Rights 1688 and the Bill of Rights 1689, which is an extension of the Magna Carta and formed the basis of the Glorious Revolution. The Glorious Revolution ended serfdom and empowered people to work who they wanted to work for whom. They had a choice who they wanted to work for. I think as it stands, if there is such a thing as this lawful rebellion, people are going to need lawyers, they're going to need advisors, they're going to need all sorts. It's not something that you can just go out and do willy-nilly without having some understanding about what it entails. So I would think that you'd need a lawyer and advisor before putting that into play. Like I said, I looked at a video. I'm not quite sure. The thing is, you watch so many things and it's hard to decipher what is there to provoke, what is there to distract, what purpose information is being given to us for. There's always a reason why things are highlighted and given more focus, and normally it's a distraction. We don't know what it's a distraction from. We know that with everything going on with George Floyd, we're all distracted from the coronavirus now. We're distracted from the deadline for the lawful rebellion, if it is to take place on the 22nd of June. And we're distracted from these change in legislation, in the health and protection legislation. So, you know, we have to kind of ask ourselves when things are being, when we lose focus on both ourselves, our needs, our peaceful, our intellect, you know, that part of us that guides us and governs us and tells us what is right from what is wrong, and emotions take over, and we lose sight of what is really happening. We have to be careful about that. So anything that does that, anything that kind of distracts you from yourself and your sense of security, you have to be careful, because these things have a way of sneaking up on you, and when you're distracted, you're not looking, you're not noticing things. Anyway, what does a lawful rebellion allow citizens to do? Well, for refusal to pay taxes, fines, and any other forms of monies to support and or benefit said unlawful governance of this country. For refusal to abide by any law, legislation, or statutory instrument is deemed invalid if this unlawful governance that is in breach of constitutional safeguard, to hinder in any way possible all actions of treasonous government of this land, who have breached a constitutional safeguard defined with no forms of violence in any way, just lawful hindrance under the freedoms granted and asserted by the constitutional law and Article 61. So what's supposed to happen is that you're not supposed to use violence. You can use violence to the extent that violence is being used on you, but no more. And what they're calling treasonous is because what they're saying is that if the government is passing laws without our consent and without us being a part of that process, and that those laws are not in our interest and they are as a form of control, they're saying that that is treason because the government isn't looking in our interest. So that is how this kind of comes about. Like I said, you know, I've kind of just picked up bits and pieces. I'm not fully knowledgeable about it. You would have to look up lawful rebellion if you're interested in knowing a bit more about it. But I'm not here to kind of make out like I'm some authority on the subject. I'm not. I'm just raising awareness to you because awareness was raised to me. The most significant influence of the Magna Carta today is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The Declaration states that people around the world are protected by fundamental human rights regardless of their citizenship, race, gender, or beliefs. That would imply that even illegal immigrants have rights and they should be preserved. But we're made to believe that no, they don't have rights. Very few of the Magna Carta's clauses remain valid in English law today because a third of it was taken out over the centuries. At the end of the document, however, it stipulates this document cannot be changed, not now nor ever. And any attempt to take people's rights away is an act of treason, which is punishable by death. Well, the death sentence isn't here now, but when it says take people's rights away, that is what's happening now. I mean, the fact that we can't even go and see our partners, we can't see our families, and you know they keep changing the law every 5 minutes. We can't, you know, we're still under a pseudo lockdown, which is taking away our rights. And yes, it's under the guise of protecting us and, you know, protecting us from disease and goodness knows what else, but I don't know. The Magna Carta Universal Bill of Rights and the Constitution apparently supersedes parliamentary law. No new law can contravene the rights to us within the Constitution. So there's nothing that can override that. The Article 61 and the three significant clauses in the Magna Carta. Parliament can only apply new laws with the consent of the nation's people, and if they do not seek the consent of the people, then that is allegedly an act of treason. Without legal representation, I would not recommend that you go there thinking you have a right to lawful rebellion. However, you do have the right for peaceful protest. Because I'm not quite sure. Just look up on it, because I think the 30 days notice was given on the 23rd of May, if the sources are correct. And then it's supposed to take place on the 22nd of June. But to be honest, we have to be realistic here. If the old bill or the government know about this unlawful rebellion, do you think they're going to allow it to take place? Of course they're not. They're going to be on top of that before we have time to say Bob's your uncle. So I don't see how people think that they can instigate a lawful rebellion when they know that there's military rule in America. There'll be military rule and police government in the UK. And how the hell do you think you are going to have a lawful rebellion when you've got all the military on standby? Because that is what's happened is that everything's been brought forward. So I don't know. I don't know. All I'm saying is that you have to be careful. There's so much information going around. You don't know what's real. You don't know what's not real. I mean, I only share what, sometimes I think it may have validity. I'm not sure. I just think that, I just think it's hard to know what to do, how to do it, when to do it. That's what I think. And unless you've got, the thing is, if we had an honest government, and if we had police we could trust, and if we knew that those who have power were there to truly protect us, then we wouldn't have to have all of these theories that are going around, whether they're conspiracy theories or actual fact. We wouldn't have to worry about that. But because we do not know whether we're coming or going, and we kind of have laws that are being put in that don't make any sense at all. I mean, it's just crazy. So I don't want to confuse this video with the one I'm going to do in a moment, which is about the new law that they brought, the update of legislation that brought out yesterday. So I'm going to stop it here. And thank you for listening. Keep safe. Stay alert. Bye-bye.